Hello and welcome to the Punters Lounge podcast. Pleased to say that we are continuing to look ahead to the 23-24 EFL football season, and this is the second of three podcasts. We're going to look ahead to League One. I'm joined by Gabriel Sutton. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm really well, thanks, Darren. Can't wait for the new season, mate.
Yeah, no, neither can I. It's all gets away, of course, on Saturday, the 5th of August. Well, the championship gets underway the night before. Right, we're going to look ahead to League One, as I said. And you've got a selection at the top of the table that's a bit of an each way price here. Portsmouth. I'm sure Portsmouth fans are going to be delighted that you think they're going to win the title this season.
Yeah, I mean, whether some of them almost want to be a bit more under the radar, that's what you get from some fans. It's like when you put them
Yeah.
too low, they complain, and then when you put them too high, they're complaining that they want to be under the radar. I think with Portsmouth, I think there's a few things that I really like. First of all, Richard Hughes as a sporting director, I'm a huge fan of. I think he's got a huge future in the game. John Mousinho, I think, was a real bit of a left field appointment, but could prove to be an inspired choice. And I like some of the recruitment as well because they've got a pretty experienced League One proven core, but they've sort of added to that with a combination of young talents and maybe players that were really highly rated as teenagers since haven't quite hit the heights they were hoping to through injury, through stylistic fit, through opportunities, through culture. And then Portsmouth just feel like they can kind of fine tune those little bits and pieces in order to get that value out of them. That's what I think they're hoping is going to happen, and I've got a really good feeling about Portsmouth. So they're my title winners for 23-24.
Yeah, Bet365 gone price of it 10-1 at the time of recording on Friday afternoon, 3-1 to just be promoted. So of course, then you've got second place plus a possible playoff bid as well. So that 3-1 could look decent value.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I really like that one. Also want to talk you through a couple of others that I'm really big on. Uh, Bolton Wanderers, I think, have a great chance. They've made continual progress over the last 3 years under Ian Evatt. I think they've got a great squad. I'm still expecting another three or four to come in. Aaron Morley in midfield, I'm a massive fan of. Dion Charles up top, I think is going to score the goals. Ricardo Santos, I think, is going to be one of the best defenders in the league. And they used the loan market really well last season as well. So I'm pretty big at on Bolton winning automatic promotion as well.
Yeah, they of course finished fifth last season in the playoffs. They're priced at 7-1 at the moment. We'll touch on Derby briefly before we get to your outside picks because they're 9-2 favourites at the moment. They just missed
Mm.
out in the playoffs last season, finishing seventh. But you're hoping that they'll get into the playoffs this season.
Yeah, well, I think they'll expect to finish in the top six. That's the first thing because expectations at Derby they're always going to be high at this level, but I think probably even more so this season rather than last, where last summer they had some bit of ownership transition, which made things a bit more difficult. The reason why I'm still a little bit hesitant, even though they've got probably the best squad in the league on paper, is because I think Paul Warne's style of leadership translates really well to a club like Rotherham United, where the expectations are more modest. But I'm not sure how well it's going to translate to a club like Derby, where the demands are going to be so big. So that's why I'm sort of going a little bit cautious on Derby County, but I still think with the quality of squad, they'll certainly finish in the top six.
I'm just going to mention Charlton briefly because they've been taken over, haven't they, during the summer?
Mm. So Charlton have had a takeover. They've got Dean Holden as manager still. He found top 10 form with them after taking charge midway through last season. And with Charlton, I want to talk you through their midfield because they've got one of the best destroyers in the league in George Dobson. They've got a really creative midfielder in Scott Fraser, who's played well at this level before with Burton and MK Dons. And they've also got Panucci Kamara, who's done brilliantly before with Plymouth Argyle, and he's a real athlete. And I think those three together could be the best midfield trio in the league. And of course, they've added Alfie May, who scored 43 goals in the last two League One seasons with Cheltenham Town. So he's going to be hoping to provide that danger as well. So definitely like Charlton to get into the playoffs this season.
Right, let's move on to your big price playoff hope. It's Lincoln. Of course, what wasn't so long ago where I was focusing on them in the National League,
Hmm.
but they've done well, and you think they could certainly reach the playoffs at the very least this season.
Yeah, I think playoffs would be a fantastic season. I think automatics might be a bit of a stretch, but I think that they just really embraced the underdog tag last season. They only lost one of their 12 games against top six opposition, which shows you Mark Kennedy found an excellent formula for facing those top sides. And I think if they can kind of refine their formula for facing some of the lesser sides, um, I think they've got a great chance, and that's probably the way round you'd want to have it. You'd want to know you can get results against the top sides, and maybe need to get better against the lesser teams than feel like you're thrashing the lesser teams and not quite sure how you can
Yeah.
compete with the top side. So I like Lincoln City. I like their transfer business so far. Ethan Errahon and Ben House, I think, are going to have big seasons for them as well.
Well, they're 33-1 for the title, 9-1 to be promoted, and 7-2 to finish for the top six, which is obviously the main area which you'll be looking to back. Then let's quickly mention Barnsley before we start going towards the bottom end of the table, because of course they lost in the playoff final last year. Currently priced up at 9-1, but you think they may not reach the playoffs this time around?
Well, they've lost Michael Duff, who's proven an outstanding manager over the last 5 years. And I think that that's probably going to lead to a little bit of a drop off. We don't know how good a manager Neil Collins is going to be taking over, coming across the pond from Tampa Bay Rowdy. So that's probably the big question: how they replace Michael Duff's coaching ability. They've also lost Mads Anderson from defence. I think it's going to be difficult for them to find the same quality defender, as well as losing Bobby Thomas and Harry Istad in defence and in goal, respectively, after both made a big impact in the second half of last season. So I'm just a little bit uncertain about Barnsley. I feel like Duff leaving is going to have quite a big impact for them.
Let's have a very quick word on the three relegated sides from the Championship: Blackpool, Wigan, and Reading. You certainly think Blackpool are going to do considerably better than the other two?
I think they're just a bit more of a stable club, Blackpool. They've got Neil Critchley as back as manager, and he, let's not forget, got them to promotion in 2021 from this level, and by the way, to a mid-table championship finish. So he's clearly an excellent manager. There's obviously a little bit of tension from the circumstances in how he left, but I'm sure that'll be put to one side if he can get some results. But obviously, there's the uncertainty, I think, at the other two clubs in League One with Reading and Wigan, because they've both had some ownership issues, and it feels like a bit of a transitional season for both of them.
Well, talk about sort of ownership issues and chairman issues. We'll move on to Fleetwood. Obviously, a side I know quite well, having come from non-league up, and Andy Piley put lots of money into them to get them up through the leagues. But of course, he had to leave, and he's been jailed for 13 years. So a lot of upheaval, I'm guessing, at Fleetwood ahead of the new season. And you think that they're going to be back in League Two come April?
Yeah, for me, it's a bit of a psychological theory on Fleetwood. I can totally understand how the kind of majority view on them is that it's not really going to affect them too much practically, in terms of the day-to-day stuff for the players, and actually in terms of the quality of the squad, it's not a bottom four squad. So I can see why some people are surprised why I think they'll go down, but I just think that Andy Pilley is such an adored figure at Fleetwood Town. And I think the idea that the person that the club has to thank really for the success they've had over the last 18, 19 years has got his money the wrong way. I think that's a really hard thing for a club to kind of accept and process. And I feel like that's a bit of a journey for them. So that's where I'm a little bit worried about Fleetwood, I suppose. But the others I'm concerned about would be Port Vale, Cheltenham, and Northampton, who I think could struggle as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly glad you got Cheltenham, being a Gloucester fan myself. So it'd be good to see them coming back down again. But I'm guessing the loss of Alfie May is probably why you think that they're going to struggle this season.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that was a factor, definitely. Maybe not as big a factor as maybe some outsiders would probably assume. I think the key thing for me with Cheltenham is they had about 10 games last season where they just didn't turn up at all in. Most of the other performances were, reasonably competitive at least. But that's a bit of a sort of a red flag for me, where you have 10 no-shows in a season, including cup games. So that's why I'm kind of slightly cautious about Cheltenham going into this season. And there were times that where it was a slightly fractious mood at Wadden Road, and it felt like almost a point of closer crisis. And they had certain moments where, when they produced a good performance, they had the individual quality of Alfie May that would make sure that translated to results. I'm not sure they're going to have that this time round. Someone that's going to be as clinical as Alfie May, and that's why they're going to have to keep the no shows to a real minimum. So that's why I'd be a little bit worried about the Robins. I'm sure you won't be as a Gloucester fan, but um, yeah, I think they could struggle.
Yeah, well, Port Vale's your main one. So they're the biggest price that you've got in the relegation zones, 3-1, and you think the team from Stoke-on-Trent are going to be back in League Two next year?
Yeah, I think they've made some decent additions in goal defence and midfield. But the big question for me is well, there's two big questions. There's first of all, is how good a manager is Andy Crosby, and whether the loss of Darrell Clark, who is probably the most popular Vale manager since John Rudge, how that's going to sort of impact the mood around Burslem, and also the question of whether they're going to have enough attacking quality in terms of creativity or goal scorers, or bit of pace in attack. I don't really see enough in all of those areas, so that's why I think Port Vale could struggle this season, and I'm not sure about Northampton as well, whether they've got a squad for League One level. So yeah, Fleetwood, Cheltenham, Port Vale, and Northampton would be my four picks.
Yeah, Port Vale are 3-1, Cheltenham 6-4, Northampton 15-8. So of course promoted from League Two last season. Fleetwood are the 5-4 favourites. We'll just briefly mention Carlisle. They were the playoff winners. They're 6-4 second in the betting at the moment. But you think they've got enough just to survive?
Yeah, I think it's a bottom four squad. But I'll put Cambridge in a similar boat to this, where the squad might not be quite there on paper, but I've got so much faith in the manager. So in Carlisle's case, that's Paul Simpson. In Cambridge's case, that's Mark Bonner. I think that's going to carry them just about enough ahead of the bottom four. So that's really my thinking on Carlisle. But obviously, keeping hold of Owen Moxon in midfield is going to be crucial.
We'll wrap things up then. We'll just confirm your bets for League One. So your title winners,
Portsmouth 10-1, of course.
Portsmouth 10-1, yeah, and also say 3-1 to be promoted. So you've got a nice safety net there of taking the tens for the title. But if they get promoted by any other means, then obviously 3-1's a nice price on that as well. Your outside bets more for the top six, I'm guessing.
Lincoln City for the top six is one I really
Yeah,
like.
yeah, priced up at 7-2, and your main bet for the relegation.
My main bet for relegation is Port Vale.
So Port Vale. So that wrap things up for League One. Of course, we've got two other podcasts. We've got the Championship and also League Two. So do join us for those. And thank you to Gabriel for joining me.
Cheers.